Welcome to 17 Strong. Victories don't come by accident. Here's your host, Steve Teixeira.
Thanks, Andy. Welcome to another 17 Strong podcast. I'm your host, Steve Teixeira, along with my beautiful wife, Holly. Hi, babe.
Hi.
Well, we have quite the energetic guest with us today, don't we?
Absolutely, we do.
Would you like the honors?
Yes, I would. I'd like to introduce you to one of our bubbly Victory Trip recipients, and her name is Brittany Dietrich. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Welcome,
Good.
Brittany.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super fun. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll start. Okay, so Brittany is not a cancer patient. And as our mission states, we send victory trips on young adults on victory trips that have battled life-threatening diseases. So tell us, what exactly do you have? Because I can't even say it properly.
So I have what's called dysautonomia and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And with that comes gastroparesis. I have a pituitary tumor, so I have like a brain tumor. And basically what that means is my brain and organs are not connected. So like normal, your autonomic system, the stuff that you do without thinking automatically, my body struggles with. So like I can't go from one temperature to another. I never know, like, am I going to throw up or do I have to go to the bathroom or gosh. Little things like that. I've gotten a lot better at it now that I've kind of learned all of these things. But yeah, sure. So my entire gut from my stomach down is paralyzed. And that's because of years and years of misfiring and not knowing what that is. So yeah.
Interesting. And
yeah.
You are, right now, you're 26. Is that correct? Am I right?
27.
27. Okay.
I think.
So, yeah, I know, right? I got to calculate.
We all have that problem.
Yeah, I'm like, wait. I thought about that last night, too. I was like, am I turning 28 or 29 this year?
Oh, my. Oh, my. Well, you're super young. So tell us how you discovered this, first of all.
So now as an adult, looking back, there were lots of signs when I was little. I was really, really slow to grow, but my whole family's small, so that was kind of brushed off. My older sister, who's like 4 years older than me, is actually smaller than me. I never went to the bathroom. Like I would go once a week and things like that. And because it had been that way my whole life, I never thought anything weird of it. I never even thought to complain about it or tell my doctor. I thought that's how everyone was. And things like that. I would get a lot of random like bladder infections and different things like that. Just because, again, I didn't know what was happening to my body. And my doctor's like, oh, it's normal, she's small and that's fine. Or, that's just the way her body is. And I was healthy in every other way. I played sports. I, never really missed school or things like that. I was super fiery, had a big attitude. So no one ever really questioned anything.
Changed.
No, and I hope it never does.
I hope that too. But yeah. Okay. So you pretty much saw signs since you were little then.
Yeah, but we didn't know it. And then when it really started hitting was about my senior year in high school. I was a competitive cheerleader and gymnast and tried softball and a couple other things. And I was no longer able to keep up with everyone else. All of a sudden, my flips and tricks and things and being super hyper just kind of started going away. Anxiety runs really deep in my family, so we thought that was it.
Sure.
And things like that. And, I ended up quitting the cheer team and stuff because, again, my attitude got the best of me. But really, it was because internally I was like, I just don't feel good and I don't know how to explain it.
Right.
And then I went to college and I started passing out. They thought I had epilepsy and they diagnosed me with that. They said, oh, these are seizures. And I was living in the dorms and they would have to call the ambulance all the time. I can't even tell you how many ambulances I've been in. But every time they would run the EEGs, they would come back normal. They're like, well, your brain waves seem fine. But 30% of people with this, you can't tell. And then they put me on all the medications, and then the medications would then cause more issues because I never needed them in the first place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then because the issues weren't stopping, they would raise the dose of the medicines that I was on, and so then I was out of whack. And I mean, I look back on little like home videos and silly things that I'd done on the internet, and I was not myself. I was like a demon child living in my body because I was just
I had scary.
I had no control over emotions. I had no control over a lot of things. And this is the time of your life when you're supposed to be learning how to be independent, how to do all these things. And I thought the world was out to get me. Yeah. And I was mean. Like I was mean, and I'm not like that at all.
That's interesting. Did you end up moving back home? Or?
I did. I ended up going home. The school is really, really flexible and really cool. I got to, take classes online and stuff like that. But then by the time that I had left, I went to Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, which is
I love that school.
Oh, it's so fun. I had a really good time, and I made some really, really good friends who I still keep in touch with, which is amazing.
That's great.
Once we figured things out, and they were like, there you are. Everything kind of changed. But yeah, so I went to Mayo Clinic because that was right next to the college. They admitted me for 2 weeks, and every single day was test after test after test, swallow studies, tubes going in places you'd never imagine they could go.
Wow.
And then I was finally diagnosed. And that was probably about 3 years after everything had started, like really, really taking effect. I was almost done with the age that people are done with college by the time I finally had a name to the puppy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's rare. Is that correct?
So it is rare, but it's not. It's
Okay.
just very, it's new. It's now just becoming something that they can diagnose. So a lot of it is there, but it's misdiagnosed as other things.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And when's the average age that you would get diagnosed with this?
About my age. It's young adults and mostly female and
Really?
mostly my ethnicity. Yeah, it's young white females.
Gotcha.
I know a couple of guys.
That's
It's cool. I
interesting.
get to go to a conference every year through like a feeding tube company thing,
Sure.
foundation, whatever. And I've met people that are my age, and we all have very similar stories. It's crazy. It was the first time I felt like I fit in my life.
Of course, because, okay, that brings up a whole nother thing. So because your insides are paralyzed and your gut is paralyzed, you have trouble eating.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about that, because how do you cope and what do you do on a daily basis?
Yeah. So, every day is different. And
Sure.
that, it's definitely a roller coaster. There's no cure. When you get diagnosed with this stuff, there's no roadmap. There's no
Sure.
treatment plans. It's let's try this and see how you do. And then with every treatment, you're chasing all the side effects. And then you're wondering what's caused by the medication, what's caused by your disease. And you just don't know because they overlap. So, an average day kind of looks like I wake up and right away I know kind of what kind of day it's going to be. Do I wake up
Really?
feeling sick? Do I wake up feeling good? You'd never really know. I could go to bed feeling totally fine, and then at 2 a.m. wake up in tears, shaking and sick and miserable. Or now we've learned that what looked like seizures are not seizures at all. It's my brain kind of gets stuck. And so it's trying to tell me something, but my organs can't read that. So
Sure.
like my heart will flutter. I sound like I'm panting. I am not mentally there. Like you can't hold a conversation or anything like that. And then you just kind of have to wait it out, usually about a couple minutes or so. The only thing is like doctors recommend kind of like shake me or something just to kind of like wake me up because I can go without oxygen, and then that causes a whole
scary.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's always in my sleep. It's never when I'm awake. Like I'm safe to drive. I can take care of kids, like things like that.
Sure.
It's always in my sleep. So that's
it's the unconscious state, basically.
yeah,
that
because
this happens.
it's what your body does when you have no control. It's the autonomic system.
But do you remember that? Like
No.
in the morning? That's what my next thing
No.
was. Okay, you wouldn't even remember.
No.
So somebody will tell you, oh my
yeah.
gosh, it was a rough night last night. You're like, really?
Yeah, and sometimes I can feel it because like I'll have a really bad headache, or like if I had to be pinched or something, I'm like, bruise my arm. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Okay, yeah.
But so with eating, I don't feel hunger. Sometimes I'll crave things, and everybody that knows me knows like she wants something, get it, and like get 50 of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a J tube, which is a feeding tube straight into my jejunum, completely bypasses my stomach. And that I get feeding tube formula. I can kind of put whatever I want through there as long as it's not something that I'm allergic to. Another side effect is mast cell disease. So whereas my blood doesn't look like I'm allergic to anything, my body says, oh, you can't have this today. And I'll just break out in hives and go anaphylactic for no reason.
God.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's entertaining sometimes. I'm like, look at her attitude. Look what I can do.
Your positive outlook.
I love it.
Wow.
I love that positive attitude.
I mean, you have to. If
do.
you're not laughing, you're crying, and
Yeah.
I'd rather be laughing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I cry for sure. I mean,
Absolutely,
come on.
yeah.
Like I said, I'm a very emotional being, but you know.
Love her. Okay, so
So,
then
yeah,
you do
it's-
have a J tube.
I have the-
But now let's talk about like eating through your mouth. Like you can eat.
I can eat through my mouth, and I love it. I
Okay,
want to.
good.
I love food. I've never been a picky eater. So to all of a sudden have an allergy list, I'm like, what are you trying to do to me?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? So I eat by mouth, but I don't absorb any of it. You know, like it doesn't.
So it's like social.
It's just for
eating.
fun. Oh yeah.
I did not know that.
I can drink wine and then completely hook up to an IV and feel nothing.
This is so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
mean-
nothing absorbs.
Yeah.
through.
I mean, some does, but it's not enough to live. Like I
Right.
can't grow. I can't, function. So then I also have a Power Hickman, which has, it's double lumen, and I'm on TPN, which is IV nutrition, and that's how I get my medications.
Gotcha.
Because, you want to feed the gut when you can, which is why I have the feeding tube. It keeps it moving, it keeps it
Mhm.
alive so it doesn't die, and then I need like a transplant, which unfortunately happens to a lot of people with my diseases.
Wow.
Luckily, I've not reached that point, and I hope that I don't. And that's actually where I told the doctors, I'm like, if I reach that point, that's where I'm done. Because I want the quality of life. I don't want to live my life in a hospital bed.
Right.
Um,
No, I get that.
yeah. And so,
Yeah.
so then I get everything I need through my IV. And then the J tube is to keep things moving when I can. Some days I hook up, some days I don't. And then eating by mouth is so that I can be a human.
So that's like normal.
Yeah.
Like that's what you would consider just to be normal. Okay, so let's
Yeah.
talk about, because when we had never done a victory trip that was non-cancer,
Mhm.
and so what would you consider being your victory?
So it's not like there's an end of treatment or an end of this disease. It's never going to go away.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't say that. God is good. But every day is kind of a victory. And getting to the diagnosis was a victory. The fact that I'm no longer scared to live my life big and loud and be myself is a victory.
Right.
And even though, going on the trip, the IV pumps and the tubing and all that stuff came with me, and I had to very strategically plan everything out to make sure that if something went wrong, it was okay. I did it.
Yeah.
Even the trip itself is a victory. And
yeah, for sure.
I never got sick. We never had issues. I mean, I woke up one morning because I tried duck the night before, and my body was like, why would you do that to me?
Mhm.
But it was so good.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I didn't care.
Interesting. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so and I remember when I met you for the first time. Do you remember that by chance?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to hear your version of that, because we met at a craft fair and
Yeah.
we had a 17 Strong booth.
Yeah.
And tell me about that.
So just a couple of weeks before that, I was actually hanging out with so I help a friend out watching her kid, and we were hanging out that night outside around the fire pit, and she was like, if you could do anything, like what would you do? And I was like, I would eat good food. And that doesn't
Mhm.
sound like a lot, but
Right.
for someone who can't eat, or who, I went my whole life without eating, and then all of a sudden, we started talking about dreams and things that I'd really wanted. And
Mhm.
one of the hard parts about my disease is that when you're in the hospital, you have the equipment of a cancer patient. So I have the central line that you get chemotherapy through. And that's
Yep.
what I knew it too, because I had a friend who had leukemia when I was really little. And when they told me that I was getting this line, I was like, wait, but I don't have cancer. Like, why would you give that to me? I didn't understand.
Right.
And so, sharing hospital rooms with these things and always being on the oncology floor and things like that, you see a lot of the good things that happen. It's not good to get cancer. I would never wish any kind of disease
Right.
on anybody.
No.
There's no comparing diseases or anything like that. But you see kind of other foundations pick that up sometimes, especially in a children's hospital. You know, the oncology floor is where the famous people visit and things like that. And when you're not on those units or you're there and you're not that patient, they actually don't come and see you. You don't get treated the same.
Yeah, because you don't have they're not
that
aware
disease.
Of it. Yeah. They don't
so
know a lot about
you could be getting the
disease.
same treatments, and not that they're perks, because that sounds horrible. And this is where it kind of gets hard to talk about it. But like, I watched a lot of people get really cool experiences while I was going through the same thing.
Sure.
And, you know, all I wanted to do was be their cheerleader. I was always happy for them. Like, you got an end of treatment day, or you got to ring that treatment bell and stuff like that. And I didn't. I sat there and I was like, I have to come back next week and go through this all over again.
Oh my gosh.
Over and over and over. And to this day, it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
It gets very disheartening.
It does. And so I had posted on Facebook, I was like, the hardest part about this disease isn't even the disease. It's the fact that I don't get a chance to like live my life. I don't get to do, you know, I don't get to work a normal job, so I can't just go on vacation when I want to, or I can't eat the foods I want to and things like that. Like, kids should never get cancer, and adults want to go to Disneyland too. And a local mom whose daughter at the time had cancer, she's like, have you heard of 17 Strong? And I was like, well, I heard about Ryan because, you know, from coming from SLO and stuff, kind of everybody kind of heard about it, but I didn't really know anything about the foundation at the time. And so I clicked on the link that she had posted in the comments, and I was like, wow, this is really cool, but I could never ask for that. Like, I don't want to do that. That seems weird. Like, I don't want to, you know, like, hey, look at me. Like, I want to do this too, because that's weird.
Yeah.
And so I had a doctor's appointment the following week, and I went to that doctor, and I was like, okay, I know that you're my gastroenterologist, and this is kind of awkward, but do you think this is something that I could do? And she looked at it and she was like, well, it says they grant trips to young adults. She's like, you're more than qualified for that. She's like, this would be so amazing. This could bring you such joy in the hardest part of your life.
Right. Was this in Stanford?
Yeah, this was at Stanford. And they had never heard about you guys, and they loved it.
Oh my gosh.
They were like, we have so many young adults in here that, you know, kind of go through the same thing where they get these horrible diseases and foundations kind of drop them off. They're like, you're an adult now, and if you're not on hospice, we don't really want to pick you up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, do you think you could send them an email? I was like kind of quiet about it because I was like, this is so weird. And it sounded too good to be true. I was like, are you sure this is a thing? And it was so small, and I was reading the different stories, and I was like, all of them had cancer. I feel weird doing this. But my doctor reassured me. She's like, they can say no, and that's okay.
Right.
And unfortunately, I was used to that. You know, I was used to hearing no. And so
this time you heard Brittany Dietrich, come on down.
I know. And I was like, what?
But you have to go back to when I met you, though. Because
and that's...
I did not know about the whole, the whole email and the social worker, her gastric... I didn't know about
it was
that.
A nurse that had reached out to you.
It was a nurse.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, go
so
back and tell me.
I'm walking into this craft fair with my mom and her best friend, and I was like, Mom, I think that's the foundation that they might be talking about me at. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, you know how I said that there was a place that like kind of grants young adults like that are really sick, like trips? I may or may not have applied us, Mom. And she was like, what do you mean? That's awkward. And I was like, no, Mom. Like, just if they say no, that's okay. And she's like, well, do you want to go say hi? And I was like, I don't know. This might be awkward because, like, if they haven't read anything, like, I don't want them to think that I'm just going up and asking for something.
Right.
And so I was like, but also I kind of want to know what they're about. And the thing, too, is what you do and why I love you so much is that before I'd even heard about you, I'd wanted to do something like this because I had saw the need.
Oh, my gosh. Such a need. It's so good to have somebody else say that because
and I mean,
there is a need.
When you're outside of the hospital and you don't see it, and when you have a kid going through something hard, you know, there's the other places that pick that up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So unless you're in the shoes, you really don't see it.
Yep.
Right.
And no one's talking about it.
No.
That's
one
the
is
thing too. You know, I don't want to complain on the internet, you know, and even the way I said it too, I was like, I don't want anyone to be sick, but also like, I want to do something fun.
Yeah.
And it was a completely innocent Facebook post. And the fact that I had gotten positive reviews and
Sure.
like, comments on it, I was like, wow, okay, people are nicer than I thought they were. Cause I was even afraid to post it, but it was just it meant so much to me. I was like, I just want to say something.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like creeped up to your booth and I was like, hey. And you had just gotten the email because the first thing you said, you were like, wait, is Mallory your nurse?
See, I knew this.
And I
knew
was
this
like,
was happening. Yes.
Yeah. And you're like, I just read about you and it's almost the new year when we talk about it. And then you just took me everywhere and introduced me to people. And I was like, okay, I'm home. Like,
oh my gosh.
This is good.
That was so cool because I remember our little toad because our toad was around and she was kind of hopping around and I think that you saw her without her head on, without her mask on and stuff. And she was like, oh my gosh, she's a girl. And it was so funny. So anyway, I just saw this personality come out and I'm like, you would never know that you were sick.
No.
And we talked about that. Like nobody knows that you're sick. When a cancer patient, you can kind of see that.
Yeah.
And so I just saw this bubbly person that really inside you were sick inside. But the outer appearance wasn't. And so at that craft fair, we had one of our board members there.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wanted Chris Centeno to meet Brittany at the time because he was going to be my reinforcement to try to get her improved because he had seen her and saw that she was living out her victory. And so it was super cool. But so that was our first meeting. So I was like, I was in with both feet, but I just had to make sure that the board was in. So eventually you did get approved and that was super fun and super cool. And we're super, I just can't, she's part of our family now.
Exactly. And your victory came in the fact although you didn't get to ring the bell, your victory is the fact that you got a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. You know how to live now. Mm-hmm. You know what works, what doesn't work, and you're able to function at 70%, whereas before you might have been at 30 or 40%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, and it's a roller coaster. There are days, I mean, when you even texted me to ask, like, we want to bring this up. What do you want? I was super septic and like in step down and not doing well. I don't even remember texting you what I wanted. So I'm really glad that in my like loopy, drugged up state, I knew what I wanted still. Because when I got the approval text, I was like, I don't remember asking, but I'm so excited.
Isn't that so? That's even better though.
Yeah.
That's even super. That's just awesome. I want to talk really quick about how many surgeries have you had?
I lost count.
Okay.
And I get them multiple times a year. Because every time every 3 months, you have to get your feeding tube swapped out. And because mine is not in my stomach and it's in my jejunum, you have to be put to sleep for that. So,
gotcha.
Now I can actually do it on my own. I've learned how to like bite my cheeks and do it myself on the kitchen counter. It's painful and my eyes usually water, but it's way better than going and getting put under anesthesia. But I absolutely lost count of how many times I've been
when
under
I met
anesthesia.
you the first time, I think you were like, I think
it was like 18 or something by the time that I had met you. Yeah. And then, there's also all the procedures. I always have to get, endoscopies, colonoscopies, biopsies. Every 6 months I have to get the tumor scanned.
Wow. So there's a lot to it.
There's a lot. It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
To have what I have.
Exactly. And then the other thing I wanted to just mention is that, you do have the port, like a cancer patient, which you had just talked about a little bit. Now tell me, have you ever had chemo?
I have, but not as intense or as big as, like a cancer patient would. I never lost my hair because of it or anything like that. It was actually more oral than it was IV. But a lot of the side effects were still really nasty. I would get the mouth sores. I'd go neutropenic.
Absolutely.
White as a ghost, kind of things like that. And it was daily for 6 months or so. And this was when I was still going to Mayo Clinic and driving back and forth. I'd have to make the 8-hour drive.
That sounds familiar.
A lot of the times it was alone too, because, my parents are still working. And at that point it had kind of become routine. And they're like, are you okay to do this? And I was like, I got it. Put on my big girl pants and go.
That's right.
And so because it's autoimmune, they want to suppress your immune system like they do on a cancer patient. So a lot of the treatments look the same, just on a different scale.
Gotcha.
And then again, it's all the side effects you have to chase with that make more medications. And then you're dealing with the side effects of that. Like, the main thing I feel all the time is nausea. And I never know if that's just the way my stomach's being that day or if it's the medication.
Gotcha. So it's hard to determine those because they do overlap, like you said. Okay. So she's been through a lot. To say the least. Oh my gosh. Okay, but during the surgeries and during the chemo or whatever, all that stuff, are they trying? Obviously, there's not a cure. We know that. But what are they trying to do with those surgeries? Are they trying to make it easier for you to eat, or is it just chasing the symptoms? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I go into flares, which means, the disease will kind of take over and the medications will stop working. And sometimes my gut will just completely shut down and I can't take anything orally or by the feeding tube. And it has to go all IVs. I usually end up hospitalized by that point. And then no matter what, and there's no pattern, I end up septic at least twice a year. And
right. But now right?
Yeah.
Didn't you tell me that? Like you knew when you were about ready to go septic?
Oh yeah, I have signs. So, and they're funny too. I smell onions. Like it's a weird smell. Like my sweat will smell like onions. And then it'll start in my hips and it's like a deep bone pain. And it's a specific pain that I only get when I'm going septic. And then I'll feel warm all over my body, but my nose will be freezing cold. And I'll get like the shakes. And sometimes I like feel borderline. I'm like, okay, where is this going to go? And I kind of like text everybody like, okay, this could go either way. We'll see by the end of the day how it goes. I'll take Tylenol right away, do the things. And then I know within a couple of hours, I'm like, I know this, guys, it's happening. It's going. And it's straight to the emergency room.
And ICU probably, right?
Not every time, which is nice. I have been there a couple of times. It's
okay. Not
a good time. But,
no.
The thing about, because this disease, it doesn't end and it's my life and no one wants to be in the hospital. No one wants to be there, but I've made it home. I always have a backpack that's ready to go with my favorite blanket. That's just for the hospital. I have a couple of pairs of pajamas. I have an adult coloring book with cuss words in it and I'm ready to go. Okay. And, it's now we're in a spot where, I'm graduating the children's hospital and going into the adult world, but I'm getting treated as a pediatric. So like my IVs are peds, my feeding tube hardware is peds. My disease is mostly known by peds, but I'm almost 30 years old.
Right.
So
wow, that's something. Yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't even think about that because so will you will not always be on the peds ward. You're now transitioning. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And now the hard part is too, because I just got switched over to a new hospital because of my insurance. Their pediatric hospital and adult hospital are 20 minutes apart. So like when I was admitted in November of last year, I couldn't actually get everything I needed because they only made it in the pediatric pharmacy and wouldn't transfer it to the adult hospital.
Oh, gosh.
I went to the peds emergency room because that's where my doctor told me to go. And then they ambulanced me over to the adult side and I didn't actually end up getting what I needed.
That's disappointing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a big issue with a lot of people with my disease too.
So you're still in this transition phase of knowing how to deal with it as an adult.
Yeah,
because,
and nurses don't like that either. When I say
more
this
than
is
they
how,
do?
well, no, it's not that I know what, more than they do. It's I just know what works for me.
Sure.
And so, or like I'll catch something like, hey, don't touch my central line like that. And if I'm not on an oncology floor, a lot of nurses don't know that equipment. They don't know.
Sure.
A lot of it, or they'll send a different nurse from the oncology unit to get me.
Right.
And that ends up being
and it's part of being your own advocate that we say time and time and time
Yeah.
again.
And
You
that's
know what works for
hard.
you.
It is hard.
But that's how I've made friends with nurses too, is because I put on that smile and I'm happy and I'm bubbly and I'm like, I totally understand that you don't understand this. So this is what works for me.
Yeah.
And
are they receptive to
I
that?
get about half and half.
Oh.
A lot of the time, the nurses are my age and they come into my room and they want to hang out. And I make it fun. I'll be, running 103 fever and shaking and feeling sick and I'm up and dancing because I'm like, I want whoever comes into my room to be happy.
I think that's amazing. That there's a lot to be said about that because we say that time and time again as well, is mindset's everything. Mindset is 90% of it, because if you do have a poor attitude, or, you're just not going to feel as good either. Okay. I want to go move on a little bit about what was your first response when we told you about your victory trip, because we haven't talked about that. We need to talk about, what did you decide?
I know.
And what were you thinking?
Well, like I said, when I got the text, I'd never even remember asking for it,
right?
Because I was so sick. So I was just super excited. And then I was like, there's no way. Like, how did this happen? And I had to like scroll back and read our text. And I was like, oh, rad, like cool. And then it started like, okay, I really have to think hard about this, because I can't just do whatever I want. You know, my body has to kind of decide for me what's safe and what's not. So when, you told me that I got the Disney cruise, I was like, yes, this is the safest place that I can go. Because the way that the Disney company works is like, if you need something or want something, they make it happen. And so I called the cruise line, and this was after I'd met up with you to kind of like say what I wanted. But going into it, I had to pick the exact cruise I wanted, and I couldn't do a 7-night. So I couldn't do like a really, really long one, but I could do like, 5-night, which was perfect. And then after we had kind of decided, okay, that's the one you're going on, that's what you're doing, I called the cruise line and I was like, okay, so this is why I'm going. And, what do you need from me? What can I do to make sure that this goes really well? Because I would hate to be sick on the boat.
Oh, yeah.
And they were amazing. They were like, so cool. Tell me all your allergies, whatever you need. They're like, if you need a second, refrigerator for your IVs in the room, we can make that happen for you.
Oh my gosh.
And we got there and they had emptied out everything. So there was room for everything. I left a little cute note with like a thank you card to our stateroom attendant. He didn't care that there were needles in there or anything like that. They left me a sharps container. And
my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And the cool thing about, and why I chose a Disney cruise too, is that every night you go to a different restaurant, but your waiter comes with you. Yes. So it's rotational dining. And that was the biggest thing for me. I was like, I don't want to feel like I'm limited. I just want a week to forget.
Yeah.
Even though I don't really get to forget because I had to bring the hospital with me.
Right.
And my server was so great, because even though I didn't really get to choose what I wanted to eat, because they modified everything, he'd come out and bring a menu and he'd be like, just so that you blend in with everyone else. I want you to feel like everyone else. And he'd bring out the menu and he's like, but if there's something that you want on here, let me know. And then you can have it tomorrow so that we have time to make it for you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
That's
everywhere
incredible.
I went, every restaurant I went to, quick service, the pool, everyone knew who I was. And I didn't even say anything or do anything other than the one conversation that I had with the cruise line in the beginning. And they'd come, they're like, hey, Brittany, how's it going? Da, da, da. And I'm like, you see thousands of people every day and they change every week and you know my name.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
You were the rock star on the ship.
You really were.
Kinda, but I don't like
So
saying that
fun.
because that's weird. But
it is
it
so
was
cool, though.
It was
And
just
I like
the first
that
time.
You didn't have to explain it every
No.
single time to this, different waiter.
They
that he
clearly
came.
told the staff, and it was so fun too, because the first night they were like, what do you want to drink? And I was like, can I have Shirley Temple? Because it's like one of my favorite little dumb things. And they brought it out and I did like a little dance jig. And I do that when I get really excited over food, because I'm like, I get to eat. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
And
funny.
every single night I'd come to the table and there's one there. And the server and like the assistant server would fight over who got to give it to me because they wanted to see me dance.
Oh my gosh. I love
How
it.
special is that?
That is super cool. That is really, really cool. And if anybody hasn't seen Brittany, she's really tiny and she looks about, I don't know.
Like 18, 16, 18.
Yeah.
High school.
High school.
It doesn't help that I have braces too.
Yeah, exactly. She does have braces, but she is 27, did we say, we think?
She's got the Shirley Temple thing going on.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's super cute. So, I just feel like you're short, but you got the personality that makes up for everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very, very like, I belong in a 10-foot body.
Yeah,
like my personality is too big. And sometimes I even have to tell myself like, shut up.
Okay. Like reel it in, huh? Reel it in, huh? That's so funny. I love that. Well, I am super excited that you had such a great time on the Disney cruise and that you were able to go, but tell me why you couldn't go on a 7-day cruise? I don't even know. It's not because of 17 Strong.
No. So my IVs have a 6-day shelf life.
Oh.
And because of my insurance, I can't get it outside of California. So to get me to go on this cruise, there were so many things that happened behind the scenes that you guys didn't even know.
I did not know.
So I went to my doctor right before I got on the ship just to make sure that everything was fine. And they even like clapped. They're like, you get to go. Like, this is amazing. Like, we don't get to send patients like you on things like this because it just, it can't happen a lot. And not to like bring sadness into the trip, but like to get an appointment with a lot of my doctors, because there's no cure, you have to wait for someone to die to get an appointment because they're so booked out. A lot of the times I'm making appointments, it's a 6 month to a year waiting list. Oh so when they get to do something incredible with their patients, it's the same as me doing something with them. You know, like they don't get to see a lot of the good stuff.
Wow.
So everybody
so
was
glad that we
really,
got to be a part of that.
You
that was
no
amazing.
idea. And that's the thing too, like, even though my story isn't over and, you know, I don't get to walk away from the disease, I get to look back and be like, I am so dang loved.
Yeah,
like, this life is so worth living.
But you're living your victory. Every day is your victory.
And I tell you, like, I have the pictures on the walls and in my phone.
Absolutely.
And all the background pictures are my mom and I in Mickey ears and my dad too, because, you know, I got to bring both my parents.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It was the best week of my life.
Did you meet Mickey Mouse?
Oh, heck yeah. I danced with Mickey Mouse.
Oh, yes. Was that what was your highlight of your trip other than the food and stuff? Do you think?
Being with my parents and bonding with them, because it's hard, you know, like there's no end. So it gets, you know, it brought my parents and I closer together. And you could have put us in a shack in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a hurricane, and I would have been the happiest person alive because I got to be with my parents, not in the hospital, and not worried. Yeah, I mean.
Right. And her parents are so fun, by the way. They like to dress up night. And they did so many fun things with you.
And before we end this, and I have to put this out there, my favorite part of the trip is that my dad told us all leading up, he's like, I'm not dressing up. I don't want to do this, which seemed weird because he's the one he's the first person to get into it. And my mom was like, we got to go shopping. We got to get a pirate outfit. We got to do all these things. And I'm like, we don't have to, you know, it's an adult cruise too. They do a really good job at that. And my dad was like, no, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not going to spend the money. I'm not going to do all this stuff. And I was like, okay, Debbie Downer, but I can't wait to have a great time with you. And the first dress up night was Halloween night. And so I brought like a ballerina outfit or whatever. I was like, okay, we'll see how it goes. You know, if I like it, we'll see. I didn't even like really bring pirate stuff because I was like, I don't know. I don't really care about that part. And my mom and my dad and I were on the top deck because it was dark. We were looking out and it was beautiful. And all of a sudden my dad disappeared. My mom and I were like, where'd he go? Where's dad?
Where'd he go?
You know, we have to go to dinner. Like, where'd he go? And so we're like, well, let's go check the room. And we kind of walked around. We couldn't see him. We walk into the stateroom and Fred Flintstone is standing in the middle of the stateroom. And he's just like, yabba-dabba-doo, like as loud as he could. And we're like, oh my gosh.
Those are the pictures I saw.
Yeah, and we were dying. It was so funny.
Nobody knew.
Nobody knew. And he did the same thing on Pirate Night. He just disappeared and we're like, where did dad go? And you'd think that we would have figured it out by now, but no.
Yeah,
no, it
comes out
totally over our head. He comes out as like Jack Sparrow, head to toe. Like he has everything. And I'm like, Disneyland would kick him out for this. Is he even allowed to do this?
So
they loved it.
Oh my gosh,
they loved it.
You guys were the hit on the ship.
Dying. It was so good.
So good.
It was so good.
That makes it so worth. I mean, such great memories. I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, if you had anything else to say, like to maybe somebody that just getting diagnosed with your disease, what advice would you give them?
Live every day like it's your last. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it's so true. You know, I could leave here and go septic tomorrow. You just never know.
Absolutely. Live every day to the fullest.
Yeah. And, you know, like you guys, attitude is everything. You know, it is so hard and it's so brutal and it's not easy. And you're going to cry and it's going to hurt. And the surgeries never get easier. You're always going to be nervous. Advocating for yourself is hard. But like, I mean, I keep going because I just know in my mind, like, God is so good. And that this isn't where it ends. And it's not over. A diagnosis doesn't mean it's over.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So, Brittany, while you were in the hospital, you had a roommate. I believe her name was Clarissa, correct? Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about her.
She's amazing. Like, I love her to death. Like, I'd do anything for her family. But I was coming out of a surgery for a new feeding tube. And I came back and I had a new roommate and she was my age and I was stoked because I had like a 90-something-year-old before that because I was on the adult side. And while we were roommates, Clarissa was diagnosed with lymphoma. And I was there when the doctor came in and gave them the news. And, you know, it wasn't my first rodeo with something like that, but it was special because I was like, I'm going to be this girl's friend. Cancer or not, she's my new buddy.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, after I had left the next day, and I mean, the night that she was diagnosed, they started chemo right away. And she sat on her bed and she was crying. And I was like, but it's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but, you know, like, can I do something for you? And she's like, no, I just feel bad because we both just got out of really bad roommate situations. And now I'm going to be the roommate that like throws up or something.
Oh, gosh.
And I was like, I don't care. You know, I don't care. Don't worry about it. And let's share a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yeah.
Like, you know, whatever. And her mom was really funny and sarcastic and cool. And, you know, our parents talked and, you know, I got to hang out with her for a little bit. And then we kept in touch. We stayed in touch the whole time.
You guys developed quite the bond.
We did. Because we both kind of have this dark sense of humor and use humor to get through kind of the hard stuff. And so we texted all the time. And I didn't get to see her in person a lot just because I always kind of have a toddler on my hip. And, you know, she ended up needing a bone marrow transplant and, you know, with the germs and stuff like that, it was really, really difficult. But I did get to see her a couple of times and I got to bring the baby with me and that was really fun.
Yeah, but you were able to tell us about Clarissa. That's how we know. And so you kind of referred her in a way.
I did. So I had told her about you guys and then I texted you and I was like, I don't know if anything's going to come of this, but she's really, really great. And like, I just can't wait for her to end treatment so that, you know, this can happen. And then a couple months later, she texted me and she's like, okay, there's 2 different foundations. And I know that you work with 17 Strong, like we not work with them, but you know, you've gotten a trip from them. Like, you know, what is that like? Is it a good experience? And I was like, you're gonna love them. Do it. And it actually ended up happening that we got our trips granted at the same time.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Or like within a month or 2. It was very, very close. And that was actually like a big part of planning my trip was she had been on a Disney cruise. And so I was texting her all the things and she was responding and telling me about her trip. And when she had relapsed, because she'd ended her treatments and then very, very shortly after relapsed. And it was right before the relapse that you guys had granted her trip. And that's what we used to get through. We were constantly texting and talking about our trips and how we were going to do them.
And she was going to go where?
She was going to go to Dublin. She wanted to do the Game of Thrones tour.
That's right. And see, we hadn't got a chance to meet Clarissa.
Yeah.
But I did speak with her via text. And, and I, you know, obviously congratulated her on her trip and being, you know, cancer-free at the time. And then she did relapse and she did text me and tell me that she did relapse. And then, and then go ahead and go on from there because that's where.
So when she had found out that her bone marrow transplant didn't work, and she had relapsed for a 3rd time, or I guess this would be the 2nd relapse, but 3rd diagnosis, I kind of knew because I had, you know, I grew up in the hospital and knowing and, you know, having a friend from the time that I was really little until I was in high school who had leukemia. I kind of like, when she told me that, you know, the bone marrow transplant didn't work, I was like, I'm going to lose another best friend. Like I didn't want to say it or anything like that, but I was just kind of like, I know how this goes and it sucks.
Yeah.
And
it does.
Yeah. And, you know, she ended up passing away. But it's really cool because I'm still in touch with her mom.
Absolutely.
We Facebook message and stuff like that all the time. And I'm never going to forget her.
Oh, absolutely. And I won't either. Just even though I didn't get to hug her or I didn't get to grant her that trip, I know that we met for a reason. And, you had given me her mom's phone number and I just reached out to her because I wanted her to know that, you know, I know how that feels.
Yeah,
so
it's a club you don't want to be in,
absolutely.
But here's someone who gets it in a way that I don't get it.
Right. But the one cool thing that she said to me was that she and her daughter, her other daughter, were going to possibly go on that victory trip for, you know, in honor of Clarissa, which really blessed me because I thought, oh my gosh, that's so cool that they can go do that and kind of have closure. I don't know, but
and that's actually what made my trip really special too. She had passed away a week before I was supposed to leave, and I couldn't go to her service because I was getting on the boat like 5 hours later.
Right.
And I was heartbroken by that. In fact, I almost like called you and been like, I can't do it. I can't do it, you know, like, and here's the hardest part too about having my disease is survivor's guilt is so real. I'm always asking, why did I make it and they didn't?
That's so hard.
Why do I get to keep going?
That she would have wanted you to go on that trip.
Absolutely. Her and Ryan. And that's right. That was the final shove. And I even made a shirt. And, the front said, "Not all heroes wear capes." And then on the back, it said, "Honoring Ryan and Clarissa." Yeah. And I still have it. I put it in like a shadow box with all my other pictures. Yeah. And that made the trip so much better because I knew the whole time, I'm like, they're so happy that this is working out.
Absolutely.
And she was with me the whole time. And there were things that happened on that boat that weren't Disney magic that, you just couldn't. I woke up one morning and again, I'd woken up and I was just kind of like, this is the best week of my life, but I wish she was here. Yeah. And I looked outside my window and 2 dolphins hopped over and we watched them for almost an hour. My parents and I, we sat out, we wrapped up in our blankets. It was cold. And we watched 2 dolphins exactly when I was thinking about the 2 of them. And I have it on video. Amazing. I'll show you after this.
I love that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That is amazing. And it blesses me that, that we are able to meet these people and be a small part of their life and honor them in whatever way we can.
And it doesn't end here either.
Exactly. No. And Ryan knew that victories don't come by accident.
No, I know. That's
right. And, to get a victory with these diseases is hard fought.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ryan didn't even get he didn't even get his victory trip. If you will.
I hope he's on all of these because dang, what a life.
I know, right? All of them, right?
All of them.
Of course he is. So anyway.
Well, with that, Brittany, we love you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me and giving me the best week of my life. And I totally mean that, not just because I'm here, but I say it every day. I'm like,
it's because of Ryan that we're able to do this.
And that's the cool thing is that. That. There's a lot of people that don't, but I think you genuinely know that Ryan, if this all didn't happen,
something really amazing came out of something really ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So for those of you that are just joining us for the first time, welcome. And for those of you that have been part of our listening audience, thank you very much. And if you guys would like to continue to help people like Brittany and go on a victory trip, please visit our website at 17strong.org and you can donate there or support in some other way. With that, we're going to wrap up. And remember, attitude is everything. Please join us next month when we'll have another special guest. Take care.
You've been listening to 17 Strong. Victories don't come by accident. To be part of the show, make a donation, or request more information, go to 17strong.org. That's SEVENTEEN strong.org.